Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 13 of my Industrial Revolution 3 playthrough. In this episode, we are going to take our first steps into electricity. Enjoy. First, let's take a look at our distribution methods here. We essentially want to do one of the small poles and one of the big ones. As far as which one you want to use, it's kind of up to you. Definitely the small pole seems to be the best one because it requires very few materials compared to bronze and iron, which are fairly closely matched to each other. But to show off the different graphics, how about we do a small bronze pole? Not to mention that will use bronze that otherwise doesn't have many uses after we go into the electric age. And we'll also need to do the large wooden pole, which will require its cable. So first, the small one. It will require some amount of copper cable and some amount of those bronze beams. And luckily, we've already done it. Essentially, it would be this. To do it right, we'll have to line it up. And it looks like I kind of pushed these plates down a lot lower than they were on this side. Because to line this up, it would be right here, which is way higher than the rest of that stuff. Although this one is really long, basically by design. So we probably could make it shorter. And we still have to use these steam inserters. So don't throw everything away quite yet. There we go. I think that does it. It was a bit of a conversion to make it shorter. So all of that goes through, but we can actually just use this splitter right there instead. The wood will just come down here. Let's put that there. Move those over. That way everything reaches. Cables go in. I keep trying to grab our electric inserters, but we're not quite there yet. That goes in. That goes out. And there we go. Making our power poles. Might as well put the big ones in there too. Alright. So here's the small ones. The stats is the same as the small poles in vanilla. It's just the poles look nicer. And they fit the aesthetic pretty well because they're bronze colored, and even though we're leaving the Bronze Age, it still kind of matches, I think. So now we have to do the big pole, which is going to require this heavy copper cable. We do need to put power poles on our list somewhere. I just don't know where. How about in here for now? So the heavy copper cable is just a little bit of rubber and then tons and tons of copper wire. Something tells me we're going to need a lot of these. Not as many as I was thinking, just 2. And a rather small amount of rubber. We could also put it on this wood belt to save a slot, and that does sound appealing, but we just don't have that much rubber right now. I suppose, though, over time we will eventually have enough of it, and saving the slot on our bus is probably worth it, because we just have so little of it. Well, we don't have to remove any of the pre-existing splitters. We'll wait for those machines to actually run. So at least at the beginning here, the rubber is going to go directly to where it's needed. So it'll be like that, and then it's going to be on the top one. And we're probably going to be out of inventory space here. One thing we can do is give the rubber wood a priority by saying the output priority is simply to the left. So it'll keep going down the line. So we're going to have a belt going up there, splitting off, and then we'll say the output priority is to the left, which makes sure that any rubber that makes it down here will at least go into this machine first. And then the rest of it will just populate these other belts and not really get used. Okay, in goes the copper. Seems like it's a very slow machine, and it is. Of course, we actually need to get the rubber in there. But there it goes. Do we actually need to hold on to this cable? Kind of. It doesn't go into a lot of stuff we might want to handcraft, but it does with things like radars, steam turbines. Well, even the electric labs need them. So we do need to store them. Don't know exactly how many we want to make. They're kind of hard to make right now, so how about we just put it on a wooden pallet instead. So that'll effectively give us 1 stack of them as opposed to 3 if we use tin. And then this one is going to be the large poles, which also has a similar set of ingredients, but it runs on straight wood and it needs iron plates. So we can actually turn this way. So that at least gets the wood in there. And the cable will be inserted this way, which means now we need iron plates. And how much are we looking at? 2 machines. Keep looking at my inventory. I want to use these electric inserters badly, but we're not quite there yet. So we actually got ourselves lined up with another pipe here. I guess that pipe is going for a radar. We certainly don't need it to go through here anymore. Well, everything got sad because no more rubber. But we'll just have to let it go for a while. Anyway, there goes iron. And now we have big poles. So we'll grab them. I'm not sure if this cable is something we should keep track of. Probably not, since it's just on the intermediates menu. Nonetheless, we do want some. And at some point, we're going to actually have to start clearing this menu out of stuff that's not relevant anymore. But I don't think we're quite there yet. So we'll take up yet one more slot and do the heavy copper cable, and there it goes. I am kind of concerned at the relatively slow pace of our rubber wood here. Oh, wow. Wait, didn't we attack biters there before? Looks like they expanded again. And these are going. I mean, that's actually kind of a lot of rubber wood that they're making. It's just a slow process. We'll see. If we end up being delayed by them, I suppose we'll just have to find rubber. But the big pole looks actually pretty cool. It's very wood. And it has a relatively laughable distance because it's about half of what the standard big pole would be. But it's still better than running a bunch of small poles everywhere like this and like crashing into them with your car. But they fit the aesthetic, I think, of the early electric age rather well. Let's fight a few biters. They are dangerously close. And I'm pretty sure I just destroyed this nest. That does look like a recent expansion. Could just wander around looking for rubber trees. And I suppose one thing we can do is just do this. It's probably going to be really laggy. But it's looking for rubber trees, and not within range. There aren't any. We could try down here, I suppose. Walk the other direction. Well, there's a few of them anyway. Take what we can get. Wow, this land bridge is tiny to get down here. Wow, it's actually an island. Which I guess means we don't need to wall this bottom part of our factory off at all. I wonder, can we do a filter for just the rubber trees? I can find them in here. There we go. Rubber tree. So we're only cutting down the relevant trees here, because this whole place is like sand. So I'm guessing there's going to be a ton of rubber trees in here. Oh yeah. This is rubber tree paradise. This is rather nice to do. Just walk through here and deconstruct the entire place looking for these trees. These are some mighty cliffs right on the end. But we gotta keep going. No! 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 There was a tree over there. Oh well. We got most of them. Actually, we could save another inventory slot by just putting the extra ammo in there. That'll help a little bit. And we are out of iron. Which I suppose makes sense. I would definitely like to make this more efficient. It actually takes quite a bit of work to convert over to electricity, almost to the point where you might reconsider if you even want to. Well, hold up. That was unexpected. Wow. I don't think that's ever happened to me before. The biters got set up on the road. But I was saying that it could be an intimidating amount of work to convert your giant factory from steam to electricity. It's part of the reason why I recommend not going nuts with these steam machines and making big main buses, is just because it's that much more work to upgrade it. So once we upgrade things to electric, even though it's going to take some work, that will really allow our factory to start expanding without really worrying so much about major changes to factory design in the future. But certainly having electric would make our iron go further, which is certainly desirable. Unfortunately, there's just a couple of steps you have to take care of before that can happen. Let's try to put enough of them into each side to at least get one dot. There we go. I'm going to try to make them all mostly even. There we go. That's about all we can do, unfortunately. And that's kind of what happens. There's only so many rubber trees. Even on a map where we specifically tried to not get completely starved of the rubber trees, we're still starved of the rubber trees. So imagine what it would be like if it was, say, an ice map. It would be really bad. Okay, we're getting pretty close to electricity here. We don't need to automate offshore pumps. Iron boilers, as expensive as they are, we don't need to build that many of them. And the biggest expense, at least when it comes to volume, is the stone bricks. Whereas the iron beams is a relatively small component, at least numbers-wise. So what I'm looking at is if we're holding 100 iron beams, that means we can assemble 10 iron boilers and still have beams left over. And if you remember the ratio from vanilla Factorio, it's 1 pump to 20 boilers, which then goes into 40 steam engines. However, if you look at these steam engines, they require much, much higher quantities of resources, plus it's just a lot of iron. So we'd really only be able to make like 4 or 5 of these at a time before needing more resources. And if each build has 40 of them in there, that's going to be a lot of handcrafting. So this is our first complex machine that we are going to automate, and that's solely because of the amount of resources that go into it. And looking at steam engines, they do only stack in units of 10, which means we're not going to have like 100 of them on a pallet or anything. So this is actually quite good to automate. I guess we'll just put it right here since that's where it's going to go. And it requires a lot of stuff, and it may not be practical to get all this stuff in here. Luckily, the pistons and the beams are already going to come in from up above, so the only things we need to worry about are gears and plates, and that's probably going to require a ton. Oh yes, we are 6.4 plate machines short, so that's not going to happen. So I guess we'll just max it out the best we can, and then see what this looks like. Although we got to select them individually, where we are 1.2 machines short, and that's 2.4. That actually seems pretty well balanced, as far as we can make it anyway. Yeah, this is definitely a machine that's going to stick way out compared to the rest of them. So I think we are no longer going to be able to just keep placing them where they are, because all these will place here just fine, but then these last two are going to have to come from 2 belts that are all the way down here. So up it goes. Oh well. Because of its size, I guess we're going to have to do something really weird. Like this. Although if we put that one back, maybe it would make a little more sense, because it would go kind of like that. And this would go straight through. And does this reach? It does. So it's getting everything in there. Got to get all this connected too. Oh, that's good. Because there it is. Made our first steam engine. Why is that off? Are these just not connected? Nope, just had the recipe accidentally removed. Okay. Making steam engines. We are going to need them in large quantities, but luckily this machine makes them relatively fast, so we might just have to make a few trips here, unless we really want to keep like 30 of them just sitting here, which seems like a lot. There is one other thing that we could research to make life a little easier, and that is fluid handling. It's an iron item, and it's actually quite expensive at 40 reinforced iron plates, but that will give us a storage tank. And of course it can hold any fluid. It gives us the small version as well. We already have the steam buffer tanks that we're using in our factory. These are essentially the same size and form factor, but because it's iron, it can use any fluid, not just steam. Also, it comes with its own canning and barreling machine. It's similar to the steam one, except it handles all resources, not just steam. And the electric pump. And also, interestingly, it unlocks the iron canister. You put it together the same way as the copper ones, but now it holds twice as much steam. So instead of 3 megajoule container, it is now a 6 megajoule container. So that's pretty good. Specifically though, I want to research this for the pump, because when we're going to be picking up a lot of these steam machines, if that steam doesn't have anywhere to go, it's just going to get wasted. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but we spent a lot of coal making it, and our coal patch isn't particularly big right now, and it's quite limited because of where all this stuff is. So I would prefer to try to keep any of the steam that we spent all this effort making. And I wonder how the steam derrick is doing. Looks like it has reset at some point, because now it is back to 52.8. So it did reset sometime. Up to 60, and now it's dropping again. So we're going to have to wait for the rest of these parts to be made. However, there is, yet again, one more thing that we can make, which is quite useful. And that would be lamps. Fortunately, the recipe is substantially different than the etheric lamp, but at this point, we have no need to ever make those lamps again. Our inventory is getting so clogged with junk. I kind of just want to have a chest somewhere just to store all of the stuff that we're never going to use ever again. Probably any of these pipes at this point. Of course, any of the lamps, the light armor. That just clears up the inventory at least a little bit. Because now we need to do a build that makes regular lamps. And we'll only need one machine this time instead of the two. But it does require these tubes. So we'll probably have to split this in a curious way to get it all to line up. But actually, we probably could remove a lot of this stuff here. And I wouldn't worry too much about holes and things starting to form in our bus here, because it's going to start changing as we stop making various things. But it'll be a lamp. It's already getting the glass. There we go. Switch that one to the plates. And now this belt right here, we would need to split. I'm sure that belt is probably going to go somewhere, but we can split off the tubes, and then we just need to clear the belt out. There's something very funny about using a steam assembler to make an electric lamp. But there it is. So let's switch over to requesting lamps. And there we go. The lamps do have double the energy consumption of the steam lamps. However, they turn off during the daytime, so the average amount of power consumption is essentially the same. So finally, we have done all of this so that we can switch over to electricity. And it's going to be a relatively gradual process. And this would be a great place for a power plant, but we're already doing stuff here. So we may want to pick somewhere else instead. Somewhere where it can grow. And ideally also kind of out of the way. Ooh, cool. That's all done. Alright. We also need to build it kind of near water, because it doesn't take long for pipe throughput to be an issue. And, oh, it's so annoying. These cliffs everywhere. I think these power plants are just gonna kind of have to be everywhere. But maybe we can get by with just having the one. Anyway, let's start with, since we have 9 of the steam engines, let's build 4 of the boilers and 1 offshore pump. Setting up for power is pretty straightforward. You just have some kind of belt going down the middle. Then like boilers on each side. And then 2 steam engines. And the power poles have to reach. But you also kind of want to put it somewhere where the whole thing is going to fit. So, how about we do this? And we might as well build it in its wide form, so we know how big it's going to be. So a repeating pattern you can do is 1 small one, then 1 big one with a space, which then leaves room for the power pole. So if you copy it again, it reaches and everyone gets their power. You can do it on the other side, and you probably do want to rotate it like this, because then if you place a second one up here, having these little gaps in here will help you smush them as tightly as you can get them. But let's do this for now. So that is the beginnings of our power plant. However, you do need to concern yourselves with getting the fuel in. Because what happens if you start to run low on power, then the inserters that are fueling the power plant will also get slow, and then the problem will get worse. Of course, you could use burners for this, but the burner inserters consume 3 times as much electricity as the electric ones do, and they're basically always going to be on because they're powering a power plant, so that's kind of the worst possible situation to use a burner inserter. But we could do this in a special way. So if the power pole for the inserters is not connected to the same network, we can keep them independent of each other. And if we grab steam from a reliable source, let's say the steam derrick, which is always going to provide steam, and then we have, let's just kind of push it out here. So we put that there and connect it the rest of the way. There we go. Now technically, this is running on the steam from the entire factory, and we could have done that. We didn't need to do a fresh power plant like this. We could have just put steam engines down and used the steam from this boiler setup, but this isn't long for the world and we're going to remove it. So I don't really see a point to leaning on it in any way. Once everything in the factory is electric, there's going to be no steam consumers, but we're still going to have the steam derrick here, and we're going to need to find a use for it. And one potential use is powering this steam engine, which will then power the inserters on a separate network from everything else. So let's get the water in here. And we might as well use the short pipe since they technically work here. And now the annoying bit of getting the fuel in here. And looks like this is a fresh coal belt right here that we can use. And it is kind of combined. That's not the best thing to do. It's probably fine for now. Once all this gets converted to electric, we can convert this belt too. But for now, it's going to be a half belt. And that thing is slowly chugging away at its 1.6 kilowatts. Yeah, but there we go. Making a tiny amount of power. And you can use these gaps in here for placing lights. And also our big pole for hopefully connecting the left and the right sides together without connecting them to that other network. And it does want to connect here, which is fine. We'll just unhook it manually, make some wires, hook it up, and now we have two separate networks. So we just need to very carefully pull this power out of here and just zigzag around the factory, taking it everywhere we might need it. The poles are rather small as far as their distance, but it's good enough. And one thing I like to do with power poles is place a light at each one of them. At least the big ones. The small ones, not as important. But because the big ones have a reasonable distance between them, it's usually a good place to start plopping lights in. And there we go. The iron is gone again. Of course it is. Well, I was intending on replacing the labs first, but maybe we should upgrade our iron setup. It will require the use of electric crushers, so let's plan it out. Currently we were planning around 7.5 a second, so let's see if it looks the same with the new technology. So 7.5, and it must be done in an electric crusher, and we'll use that, and that's it. Yeah, it looks like the number of required furnaces is the same, so we don't have to change that. All we need now are 8 crushers. So can we make them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Almost. Now that we have all these power poles and lights and inserters, we actually have the bare minimum amount of equipment necessary to start upgrading things. Still is quite a slow craft, but at least now that we have all the intermediates, it is rather painless. So how's this rubber wood doing? Hey, look at that. It's actually kind of starting to pack up a little bit. We'll let it go a little bit longer first. You know, that's not even connected at all. There you go. We'll wait on electrifying the entire factory, because part of being able to electrify it at all is the presence of power lines. So if we just wait for the spider web of power lines to form, then eventually they will be sufficiently close for all of our different builds. Okay, well, this is combining the fuel and the iron together, but it doesn't need to. And I guess we're doing a new build now, so doing the old ones is probably unwise, because we are working with electricity. It does mean, though, that we have painless short and long-handed inserters. So the input is there, output is there, and have them switch like this. There is technically room in the middle for a power pole, or we can just put them on the sides of the machines just to make sure that they are covered. And we should probably do that, because someday we might want to use that extra space in the middle, and it's not like we need to make very many of these. If we had to make, say, 800 crushers, then an argument might be made for trying to squish it down as tightly as we could. But there we go. Now we have something that we can copy. It is a wonderful grid of wires. And actually, we could just move this belt the other direction and have it mix right there. And it looks like the sun's going to go down soon, which means we're finally going to get to see what these electric lights are like. They're the same as they are in vanilla, but after being in the steam age for so long, it's going to be quite refreshing to have them. So like right there and right there. Okay, then everything else should automatically convert. If we switch those miners to electric, we wouldn't need to carry coal either. I guess I'll hook that, because I forgot there was going to be some left in the crawler. So once we have converted those to use electricity, then we will have even more slots available on the crawler just to get the maximum efficiency per run. So we're spending the least amount of time getting ore. Whoops. But for now, that gets us covered. And this alone is going to make the iron last 50% longer between trips. So I definitely wanted to get this done. And there we go. Let's see what we get. Well, this is our first electric machine, and you can see the green lights on all sides of the machine. And that is identical to what a mod like Bottleneck would tell you, that the machines are running at full speed and there are no issues. We can check all the machines here, make sure they are balanced with each other, and it looks like we are making slightly too much of the crushed ore, but I think that was just all of the buffers and the recipes in the furnaces needed to switch over, because now everything is fine. Alright, awesome. We are getting the maximum of the belt, or at least half of the belt, which is essentially maximum. There's the electric lights here. It's kind of hard to tell the difference when they are close to the other ones, but there they are. I feel like you can put them slightly farther apart than the steam lamps and actually still be able to see. And checking our electrical network, we've got 1 megawatt of crushers running now. So it'll be interesting to see our network expand as we start replacing everything. Okay then, now it's time to upgrade our labs. And this is actually kind of tricky, because the electric lab is twice as fast for double the energy consumption. So in the end, it's basically the same. And it looks like we still need to make iron core EM coils. As far as numbers, it is going to be twice as fast, but at the same time, we could eventually go through a bunch of lab research speed research, and it's going to make the labs quite fast, quite quickly, because it's plus 20%, plus 30%, plus 40%, and then plus 50%, and those all stack with each other. So if we build a bunch of labs to kind of match what we're doing now, it might very quickly become way too much. So, like we were doing with the steam labs, we should probably start out with a relatively modest amount of research and see where it goes. Well, if the electric poles were out this far, we could do this with electricity, but I kind of just want to do it with steam, just because it's basically one more thing, and it's lots of iron ingots with some copper coils. So how much copper wire? Oh, just 2 machines, so that's not even that bad. I did get rid of the long-handed inserters out of the inventory, so maybe this should be electric, but let's do one more for the road. At least we can walk through here now because there's a gap. Okay, we're not quite done with those long-handed inserters. Making the coils. And it's request time. Trying to look at this stuff, thinking of what could be removed. But while we are switching from steam to electric, we're going to kind of need to have both technologies. So I think our inventory is just going to get even more cluttered, which means we finally can make some labs. So how many should we make? How about we start with 6? Just see how that works. So this means removing a great deal of stuff, including a lot of steam pipes. And this is essentially what I wanted this pump for. Fortunately, it doesn't quite fit in here, but this is what I wanted to research pumps for. So that way we can try to save all of that steam we spent so much effort making. So we pump that in there. And because these pipes aren't completely filled, because our steam plant up there leaves enough room for the derrick, that means there should be a lot of room in the system, because we have 219K in total to get sucked out of all of these pipes. They're still in the machines, but at least it's out of the pipes and it's out of the steam tank. So now we don't need any of this anymore. And our poor inventory. Okay, in time for some labs. We will eventually need to move them for a new science pack, but for now, it's not something we need to worry about. Because these are going to be fairly dense, we probably do want to kind of pack these power poles in here. But there they go. These labs can take steel, chrome, electrum, and explosives. And of course they have 2 module slots. We do need to dump these packs somewhere. Probably the easiest thing is just to dump them into the machines that made them, and they will eventually find their way back. And before we do anything else, how about we fire up the new labs and see what they're like. Let's find something else that would be immediately useful to us. Well, one thing we can do, it's not the most exciting thing to research. However, we can research electric forestries. Strangely enough, it does not require the original forestry to research, and I guess that is why it gives you access to all of the exact same recipes again. But it's essentially twice as fast. And it does require some electricity. The electricity requirement is very low, just 20 kilowatts. And it's absolutely a net positive that using electricity will produce way more trees per second, even though some of those trees went into electricity. Otherwise, everything else is the same. So that would be a good thing to upgrade to. And there we go. Very futuristic humming and glow out of the science labs. So compared to what we were doing before, we're suddenly like in the space age. And all of these together does 0.2 a second, and right now we're set up for 0.313, so that is actually quite close to our maximum already. So that's probably a healthy number to have. Well, the pump has completely removed all of this steam, so we can get rid of it and hook everything back up again. And that's the end of this episode. On the next one, we're going to continue to upgrade the factory with electricity, including the exciting new technology of the scrapper. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.